All right. Well, continuing with the snap judgments affecting empathy theme. So, in addition to the fundamental attribution error contributing to our, snap judgments and our lack of empathy, the just world phenomenon can also reduce empathy. A lot of times, when we make a snap judgment about a situation or an outcome, we, in at our heart, we sort of think, well, bad things happen to good people. No, if a bad thing has happened to somebody, it's probably because they did something to deserve it. They probably did something to deserve it. The world is just. Now, as we're sitting here talking abstractly, you know full well that the world is not just. We all know that the world's not fair and random bad things happen and things like that. We know that, but a lot of times when we're making snap judgments, particularly about people who we don't know, we tend to carry with us this just world phenomenon. So it's a type of snap judgment that tells us that people get what they deserve. You may have referred to it as karma in the past. Karma's going to get you. Or maybe karma's a bitch, right? These are things that we say and things that we think based on the idea that somehow the world is just. That there are that good things are going to happen to good people, bad things are going to happen to bad people. So if I see something good happening to you, I'm probably going to assume that you're a good person and somehow deserve it. If I see something bad happening to you, I'm going to assume that you're a bad person and somehow you deserve it, right? That's the just world phenomenon. Now, I would like to point out that good things happen to bad people all the time. It seems like an inordinate amount of the time, but all the time, good things happen to bad people. And unfortunately, bad things happen to good people, right? But we still carry around with us this belief that if you do something wrong, that's when something bad happens to you. And so we must be able to flip that. If something bad happens to you, it must be because you've done something wrong. It makes us less empathetic because what we do is we search for the wrong thing that the person did and we try and figure out what we can blame for why they deserve it. And really at the heart of that is us wanting to avoid bad things for ourselves. And so we reassure ourselves that we don't do the things that would lead up to that bad thing happening. I think at the very heart of it, it's not us trying to be mean to other people. It's trying to reassure ourselves that we're not likely to be victimized in that way. Perceived dissimilarity. Oh, it had a thumbnail before. So in the playlist, you'll see the video. But when others are perceived as dissimilar from ourselves or different from us, we tend to feel less empathy for them. So here we have a picture of a bunch of goldfish looking at the one fish that's black. We're all a little suspect because all of us are gold and you are black. What is happening here? When people are different from us, we call that the out group, right? The people who are like us, we call them the in group. It's kind of an us, them mentality. People who are in the in group, and the in group can be transitory. It can be like we just formed this in group. I've put people in class in groups based on what kinds of shoes they're wearing today. So like sandals go in one group, sneakers go in another group, maybe dress shoes go in another group. And then ask the groups to say what makes the type of shoe that they're wearing better than the types of shoes that the other groups are wearing. What makes their own shoes better? And what makes the other kind of shoes worse? So I get them to think about the benefits of being an in-group member. Well, all of us who have these kinds of shoes on, we can do these things and those things. And this is what's great about the shoes that we're wearing. What's wrong with the shoes that other people are wearing? Well, those people's shoes, what's wrong with those is you can't do this or it makes other people do that. And then in the final stage, then their job is to say, who do you think is nicer? People who are wearing these kinds of shoes, those kinds of shoes, or those kinds of shoes. And people tend to rate people who are wearing the same kinds of shoes as them as nicer. People with the wrong kind of shoes on are selfish or mean or slobby or other kinds of things. It's really surprising. And it's just based on what kind of shoes you're wearing, which, by the way, hopefully you're thinking what I know is true, which is that we all have a variety of shoes. So I've got sandals, I've got sneakers, and I've got dress shoes. I happen to be wearing this one today. But had I been wearing the other ones, wouldn't I be saying the opposite stuff of what I'm saying right now? And yet, because I'm in an in-group, we all start feeding each other about how great it is to be the kind of people who have these shoes on our feet right now. It's crazy, but we do it. So the video that will pop up in the playlist will show you an experiment that a third grade teacher administered with her class, where she wanted to teach them about racism, but all of the kids were white. They were from Iowa in the 1960s. And she thought, how am I going to have them really experience the emotional empathy of like what it feels like to be the target of discrimination? And so she picked eye color because they did vary on that, right? Some kids are blue eyes and some kids are brown eyes. And so she formed this sort of in-group, out-group mentality where the brown-eyed people had certain characteristics and the blue-eyed people have certain characteristics. And then she just watched it manifest. So she started it with third graders, and then she started being hired to do it in like prison situations, working with the guards and in other situations where people needed to be sensitive to racist attitudes and stuff. And it works on adults as well. You would say, well, of course, with eight-year-olds, they're quick, they'll take stuff on, and they're malleable. Well, the adults are also. And so I've got a video that'll show you that in-group, out-group effect using that demonstration. So what can we do to cultivate empathy? Well, one is to avoid snap judgments whenever we can. I say avoid because I'm sorry, it's really hard. I'm a cognitive psychologist, and one of the phrases that we always say is that people would rather be quick than right. We will sacrifice accuracy in our judgments in order to be quick in our judgments on anything. That's why people don't like math if they don't like math. It's like, well, it's a lot of work just to come up with the right answer. Like this, it's not a snap judgment situation, it's an algorithm situation. People don't like to think like that. We don't naturally want to put in the time and the effort to think in a non-snap judgment way. And so you have to like deliberately decide to not jump to conclusions. And that's a tough one. So I put that number one because that's something to work on. To maybe the second that you make a snap judgment, learn to at least identify and say, ooh, that was a snap judgment. Maybe I should give this one a second thought. Actively listen. That's another way to cultivate empathy. When someone is sharing information with you, they may be giving you details that would allow you to put yourself in their position, at least cognitively, if not also to at least a healthy extent emotionally. So actively listening, that is, ask more questions, pay attention, give encouragement as they're talking, right? Those little nonverbal cues. Oh yeah. Like, I guess, oh yeah is verbal, but I mean, those little things that we say, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Those kinds of things that we just sort of stick in to let the person know, I heard what you said and I'm processing what you said and I'm listening. Learn from fiction and from nonfiction. I mean, here you are in college, obviously, and you're learning a lot of nonfiction things, right? We're telling you a lot of knowledge and facts and things like that. Fiction gives us a lot of empathetic information. So if you don't consume fiction, maybe you don't have time for it. Who has time to sit down and read anymore? You can do books on tape and other kinds of things that you can download them for free from the library to your phone, and you can listen to them in the car, things like that. Where you can really get swept away with some fictionalized accounts of, normal human experiences. And it helps to build empathy, to hear about things that other people experience. And, a good writer will describe it in such a way that it'll help to elicit empathy in the listener or reader. And so fiction is a really important source of empathy. Nonfiction can help also because it maybe will give you statistics on the commonality of certain outcomes or sufferings or things like that. The problem with nonfiction is it's lacking that like emotional component. And so I would challenge you to consume fiction. Expand your experiences. Go out of your comfort zone. Try something new. Go someplace where you know that people who disagree with you might be, and find out why they have the perspective that they have. Listen. Don't go there to protest. Go there to find out why they're holding the attitudes that they're holding. You may come to empathize with those attitudes. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you want to stay in your anger or your dismissal or your lack of empathy. Maybe you don't want to humanize people who hold a different attitude than you. But if you allow yourself to humanize people who hold a differing opinion, you may find that you grow and develop and maybe become more sophisticated in your own attitudes. By having empathy for the other side, for having empathy for a different perspective, it helps you to grow in the maturity of your perspective. I'm not suggesting that you develop empathy and then change your mind on the subject. I'm saying develop empathy and develop your mind on that subject. Try role playing, right? Sometimes if you are maybe having a disagreement with somebody in your family, let's say, that never happens in family, so you'll just have to imagine it. Let's say you're having a disagreement and you're really sure that your perspective is right and that the other person is the one who's being stubborn or narrow-minded or whatever it is. Try a role play and you both have to do it honestly, where you say, I really want to understand your perspective, so we're going to actually switch roles, and I'm going to try and express what I believe to be your position on this, and you're going to try and express what you believe to be my position on this. And we get the opportunity to pause. I want to clarify because I don't think you're representing my perspective correctly. And by the end, maybe we will understand each other better. We'll have more empathy for each other. So actually, that's part of active listening, is to let the other person rephrase. If you as the listener have misinterpreted what they said, the original speaker gets an opportunity to rephrase it in a way that allows the listener to actually understand what the person meant. Let me clarify that, because that's not what I wanted. That's not what I was trying to imply. What I want you as the listener to understand is that this is what I meant to say. And we let them amend it, because sometimes we say things in a way that's not clear to the listener, and the listener may very validly get an impression of what we meant that isn't what we really meant. And we should allow the speaker to I like to call it fix it. Let me rephrase that. I want you to understand what I'm thinking. See similarities between yourself and the target of your observation. So, look for, on purpose, things that you overlap with in the victim of something that's going wrong, or that you overlap with in maybe those situations where you have a disagreement. Instead of looking for what you would say next to convince them of how wrong they are, look for those things that you share commonalities with. Look for similarities. Try and find a way to bring them into the in group rather than pushing them farther and farther into an out group that now you feel entitled to fight against. Perform random acts of kindness. That when you do nice things for other people, and they can start really small, if you're dragging in your garbage cans that are on rolling wheels and your neighbor's garbage cans are right next to it, maybe you live in a place where they're all sort of lined up in the front, and it wouldn't kill you at all to drag both of them, drag them up. Just a random act of kindness. They're never going to know you did it, but it's just a nice thing that you're going to know that you had done. These kinds of random acts help us to put ourselves into somebody else's position and think, it's kind of a drag to have to drag your garbage cans up. And if I were to come home and find that somebody had dragged up their garbage cans, I would feel good. I would feel like, well, that was really nice that somebody dragged up my garbage cans, and I don't even know who did it. That was really nice and selfless of them to do that. That's what I would think. They're probably going to think that about me. Oh, I'm going to actually give them a moment of pleasure today. That makes me happy to think that I've done that for someone. That helps you to build empathy. You don't have to do big things. People always want to buy people Starbucks or something. Don't do that. Don't do big things like that. And it needs to be random, and it needs to be, to somebody who's not expecting it, right? Because it's random. And so it'll just be that little thing that helps you to put yourself in their position. Think about it as a benefit for you, not a benefit for them. And then the last thing on my list of how to cultivate empathy is, if you have the opportunity to influence children in any fashion, whether you have children or you have nieces or nephews, or you become a school teacher and you've got children in your classroom, help them to develop their tendency towards helpfulness. Children are naturally helpful, but we keep telling them that they can't, you're not big enough, you're not old enough, you don't know how, you're just going to make a mess and things like that, and they lose their helpfulness. So raise helpful children. So here are some tips on how to raise helpful children. First off, give reasons to help. This will really make it so, it'll get done faster if you pitch in. Give them reasons to be helpful. Be responsive. When they have done something and they try to show you the results of what they've done, go, good job, excellent work. Thank you so much for your effort. That's really appreciated. Be responsive to what they're doing. Share your feelings, right? When you have children who are around you and you think, well, I'm an adult and I can never really, reveal that I'm scared, or I can never really reveal that I'm tired, or I can never really reveal that I'm angry. I can't tell them those things. You know what? Yeah, you can, and you should. It really makes me angry when I come home and find that the living room is such a mess. So I need you to help me out by cleaning up your mess, right? And this is specifically what I need. Good job. I love that you did that. And so share your feelings, be responsive, give reasons, give hands-on experience. Like I said, a lot of times we shut kids down and tell them they're too small, you can't, it's a mess, you can't. But instead, if you give them opportunities to help, and as they get older, more and more complex opportunities to help that might start even to reach out into the community. When I was little, the big thing was to have like newspaper drives. They would recycle the newspapers. People used to get newspapers. And so we would all come down to the school and we'd bring our newspapers that we'd been collecting. So my wagon would all be full of newspapers, and you'd make them bundles, tie them with string, and you take them down there. And then there'd be some adult that you had to hand your pile to. And then, once we got to a certain level, we had to like stack them in the truck, and the bigger kids were able to get in the truck and help stack it all. And, right. Like that kind of hands-on. Look how well I remember this story. That's like, I won't say how many, but let's say decades and decades old story of me helping in this newspaper recycling drive. I mean, kids remember this stuff and it's important for them. And they're like, we aspired to be the bigger kids who got to get in the truck and help stack the stack. Like we wanted to be able to get to do that. When you're a kid, you want to help. We should give them the experiences. Introduce cooperative learning, where you encourage kids to work together. First off, their initial learning is always cooperative. Like moms and kids and dads and kids, they're always sort of working together and being scaffolded by the older kid or the adult. So it's always cooperative when they're gaining some knowledge. But when you get to a certain point in the childhood, adolescence, like break off, a lot of times it becomes independent learning, and it's sort of just about internalizing for themselves. But if you can introduce the notion that working together, you'll actually acquire more information, you'll acquire more understanding, that kind of thing, you can have children who learn that cooperation is the goal to like achieve the bigger outcomes. Help to build child's emotional vocabulary. There's a whole movie for that probably most of you have seen. I've never seen it because my kids were too old by the time it came out. What's it called? Inside Out or something like that. And they're learning to label emotions and stuff by watching that movie. That's actually a really important skill. There are books about it, other things, because if you know what to label that sensation that you're having, it allows other people in to your emotional experience. And so when my son was really little, he'd always say, my stomach hurts. And I'm like, oh, are you sick? What's wrong? And then I finally figured out he didn't know that sensation of like pain in your stomach means you're hungry. You want something to eat. So he'd say, my stomach hurts. And I had to finally tell him, okay, that sensation that you're having right now, that's hunger. Like, let's label that what it is. And that way in the future, you can say, I'm hungry. And then when other times when it feels painful, you can say it hurts, and we can start distilling down what's making it hurt. But right now I want you to know the word. Now, I don't know if hunger is an emotion. I think for kids it kind of is, but just those like bodily sensations being labeled, including things like I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm happy. These kinds of things are really useful because then they can let other people into their experience. Encourage a compassionate self-image. Help kids to develop a sense that they are worthy, that they deserve to be loved, they deserve to be respected, they deserve good things to happen to them. They're allowed to make mistakes and they're not a failure, that not everything has to be perfect. They don't always have to be good. They don't you're lovable no matter what. That's a compassionate self-image. And children should be, according to Carl Rogers, they should be provided from their environment with a sense of unconditional positive regard, that you are worthy, you deserve good outcomes, you're lovable. That doesn't mean you're perfect and nothing ever goes wrong, and you must be perfect in order to be loved. You don't want to put conditions of worth on children, the sense that we love you when this happens. We love you when you do that. You're more lovable if you score at the soccer game. You're less lovable if you get a D on your report card. You don't want to give conditions of worth. You want to give children the impression that they are unconditionally, positively regarded. They get feedback about wrong behaviors, other kinds of things. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you are a deserving person, and that helps to build a compassionate self-image. I'm lovable, and I don't have to be perfect in order to be valued. And so that's a really important message for growing children. All right, that concludes my list of things that you can do to help raise helpful children. In our next video, we will move on to the next subject.